Do apologize for being a little disheveled this morning. I drove in this morning from Edmonton, and I was thinking of some of the comments that Jeff just made around, appearance, going in and being professional. And as I was on my way in this morning, I promptly spilled an entire cup of Tim Hortons coffee all over myself, and thought, well, hopefully the majority of the people there will be blind, so we'll be okay. And as I sit up here with two other visually impaired people, I'm quite happy about that. I found it interesting when Jen asked me to come and present today, and it was actually through the Services to Students with Disabilities area at Grant MacEwan College, where I've graduated from, and they emailed me and said, would you be willing to have us put your name forward to present as a person with a disability who's successful in their career? And I said yes, because I wanted to come to Calgary. But I thought at the time, isn't that interesting that somebody would say I was successful in my career? Because to me, a career is your entire career. I haven't done my career yet. I'm sort of partway through. It's sort of an individual in Scotland, a gentleman who was visually impaired, who's blind, and somebody said to him, have you been blind all your life? And he said, not yet. And that's sort of where I'm at, is am I successful in my career? Well, not yet. I'm partly successful because I'm partly through my career. And I base success on reaching my goals throughout my career. And if that's how I base my success, then I feel pretty good about it, because I have managed to reach the goals that I've set for myself. So Jen asked me to talk to you about my personal experience with my employment and throughout my career, and some suggestions on what made it possible for me to move forward. So really, this is all about me, just so you know. I have to tell you quickly that I have retinitis pigmentosa. There's no spelling test, so don't panic. And so I was discovered that I was losing my vision when I was 5 years old, and legally blind when I was 10, and then totally blind by the time I was about 30. When my daughter was crawling and I really needed my vision, that's when I lost it. And so throughout my career, there's been some changes in my life. There's been changes as to one minute I could read large print and the next minute I couldn't. And one minute I could see light and shadow and the next minute I couldn't. So I had to base my career on the future. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they base their career on today. What can I do today? Because that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But they forget that the rest of their life, their body changes, their abilities change, what they need changes. And so I had to base everything on, in the future, I'm going to need to be able to do this. So that's how I based my goals. I set my goals according to what I wanted for my future. I decided to go back to school, and I'm not going to tell you what year it was, because then you're going to go, oh, she was 2. No, I really wasn't. I went back to school in 1988. That tells you how old I am. But all the visually impaired people go, well, she sounds so much younger, right? The sighted people are going, she lies so badly. So in 1988, I went back to school. I went to the University of Alberta and decided I wanted to be a social worker. And at that point, I really wasn't quite sure why I wanted to be a social worker. It just sounded like a really good thing for a blind person to do. So, I could be a social worker. It could be good. So I went back, and I ended up taking my Bachelor of Arts degree at the University of Alberta. And I was so successful in my first year that I failed 2 out of 3 courses. Went back to my second semester, just switched my major and my minor, and took another bunch of courses. That year I passed, thank God. I actually realized, oh my goodness, I actually have to read and study. And I discovered what being a student was all about. And so I really worked hard my second semester. And then my third semester, I started thinking, wow, this is really cool. This student life is really neat. And so I started really getting into not just the education piece, but I started realizing that there's other things at university, like the Mature Undergraduates and Graduate Students Association and Disabled Student Services area, and some group sort of work around disabled student services in the university. And so I started volunteering. And I thought that was really, I think that's really when I got into the education, realizing that there was more to going to school than just reading. and doing exams. There's a whole life around it, and I became sort of addicted. I transferred out of the U of A and I took the rehabilitation practitioner program, and I graduated from that in 1992 and promptly started working in the rehabilitation field. I got a job fairly quickly, and I'll tell you, getting that job was interesting for me because the way I got it was I had a friend who worked in an organization that worked with people with disabilities, and I really wanted to work around in the disability field. And so I had her sneak my resume into the director's office and drop it on his desk when he was out for coffee. And he came back and found my resume on his desk and went, "Who did this?" And instantly decided he was not going to interview me because I had the gall to put my resume on his desk. So he tossed it to the side. And he happened to toss it on a pile of papers that another person had come in to get and who was hiring for another position within the organization. And she thought how nice it was that he gave her a resume to look at. And so I got called in for the interview and was hired for the job. And when she went and said to him, "Yes, I've hired this person," and gave him my name, he went, "Isn't that the resume I threw out?" And so it just goes to show that really there's lots of ways to get your foot in the door. And I should tell you, throughout my career, and I should emphasize that your career is not just what you do now. Your career is what you've done all through your life. It's that job working at Tim Hortons. It's that job babysitting. All of those make up your career. I got through university, part of my tuition was paid. I did stand-up comedy. It was a drunken moment in my life and a dare. And I went up on an open mic night and was so funny that an agent came and approached me and I got hired on. And I did stand-up comedy as a sideline for 3 years. And then when I got my job working in this disability organization, I realized that comedy was probably a really good background for working in the field. And so I worked there for a while, and I enjoyed my work. I worked in a what we call outreach program for people with disabilities. I was there for 2 years and ended up deciding I wanted to start my family. And so left on maternity leave and got back from maternity leave, and 2 weeks later got laid off. They were downsizing. And so I thought, well, now what am I going to do? I've got a baby, and I got no job. What am I going to do? So I moved to a farm and raised chickens. Because, comedy, rehab, chickens, really, you can see the flow. It goes right through. And so I raised chickens for a couple of years on a farm, which was really, I have to say, one of my most interesting jobs, because if you really look at it, it really does flow right with the comedy piece. Because if you've ever seen anybody try to catch a chicken, now picture a blind person trying to catch a chicken. I could have sold tickets. The neighbors came over and they're like, we could make money. They were entertained just watching me in the hen yard catching chickens. When I left the farm, my husband and I decided that we didn't like each other, is really what it comes down to. And so I left and I moved back to the city. So there I am, a blind single parent with a 3-year-old daughter, thinking, now what am I going to do? And so it hit me. I can't get back into the field I was in, because that is, when you're in the rehab field, you really have to look at shift work. And I couldn't be a single mom with no transportation and doing shift work. So I decided it's time to go back to school, because now my goals had changed. Because now my goal was to be able to have a good life for my child, and to be able to have my child advance in her life and be a good role model. So I went back to school and took the Management Studies program at Grant MacEwan College. When I came to my last year, I decided that I was looking for actually a job for someone else. I'd been a couple of years alone and had met someone else, and so he had been laid off, and I was looking through some dial-a-job lines and internet and stuff, and thought, well, while I'm looking for him, I should kind of look for, I'm going to graduate in 6 months or so. I should probably look at what's out there. And so I started noticing some stuff that was out there, and decided to apply for a job with the City of Edmonton just because it was there. No other reason. It was there. Thought it would be interesting to see what it would be like. In the meantime, while I waited to hear back from them, I had been asked by the CNIB to help them promote their talking bank machine, where I met the regional vice president of the Royal Bank. And we were pulled aside, myself and this gentleman, by, I think it was CBC Radio. They wanted to do a program and asked me if I could be at the radio station to do a live interview. And I said, well, it depends on what time. I got a class in an hour, and then I have a paper due that I have to get that over to my instructor, but I could probably do it at between this time and this time, but I can't do it when you're asking because I have to be home to pick up my daughter from school. But then after that, I could probably do it. And they asked Bill Bannister when he would be available, and he said, well, I'm just a regional vice president. My time is flexible. So we set up the interview. We went for the interview. It was nice meeting him and talking to him. And he said to me, it wouldn't surprise me if you were very successful very quickly. And I said, then don't be surprised when my resume crosses your desk. So he handed me his card, and I rushed home, and I checked my resume. Thought, now, what would a bank want? And so I've set up my resume. I wrote a nice cover letter, wonderful to me too, the other day, yada, 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 yada. Oh, and by the way, please find attached my resume and a testimonial for using your bank machine in case you would like to use that for your public relations. And I sent it to him. And I've never seen the postal system work this fast before. I mailed it on the Thursday morning. He called me Friday afternoon. And he said, I'm calling to talk to you about your future with the Royal Bank. And I said, oh, really? What position do you have in mind? He said, which one do you want? And I said, yours. So he said, well, I'll be retiring in 5 years, so let's start talking about where you could fit within the brand, within the bank. And so he set up an interview with me, and we talked about it, and I had a practicum placement to do, so we set up that I would do my practicum there. And it was going to start in a few months, and that would be great. In the meantime, the City of Edmonton phoned me and asked me in for an interview. Now, you need to know that the City of Edmonton has union positions. Nobody gets a job full-time, permanent, walking off the street. You have to go in temporary, part-time, casual, all of that. And so I really didn't think I had a hope of getting this job. But I was okay because I had the job at the Royal Bank to go to, so I was fine. Now, I really didn't want to work in a bank, but I thought it would be a good career move to go in and try it out and learn some new things. So I went for this interview at the City of Edmonton. Turns out it was for the coordinator for the Advisory Board on Services for Persons with Disabilities. It was really where I wanted to be. And I went in and did the interview with them, and I remember the question that Jeff mentioned. They said, why should we hire you? Now keep in mind, I was not nervous because I didn't think I was going to get the job. I really thought I was there more for the experience of doing an interview than anything else. And so they said, why should we hire you for this job? And I said, didn't you write it for me? And I think about it later and I think, oh my God, how did I say that? But I said, it really pulls together all my volunteer education and work experience into one package, and the job is everything I've ever wanted it to be. And so they called me the next morning and offered me the job, and I just fell off my seat. I wouldn't have hired me with that kind of an answer, but they thought it was a great answer. So I accepted the position because it was where I wanted to be. Then I called the Royal Bank and I explained to Bill Bannister, I said, I appreciate the opportunity that you're giving me, but this job has come up that really is in my field because I wanted to make sure I did not burn that bridge. And it worked out very well because I actually got a lot of opportunities to work with him on projects in the future, and it was a great experience for me, and it developed a friendship and a working relationship. After working at the City of Edmonton for 5 years, I got the opportunity to apply on and get the position over at the Premier's Council office, and I've been there ever since. Throughout the whole time, I have to say the most important pieces of my career, the advice I would give to you is set your goals. The way I think of it is set your goals just a little bit higher than what you think you can reach. Don't set them so far out that it's gonna be almost impossible to reach, but think about where am I at right now, where do you think you can be, and set it just a little bit higher. And if you do that, then it gives you something to stretch for, but it's not so far out of reach you don't have a hope of getting there. And set them in steps. My goal was to get a job working for the City of Edmonton. Once I got that, my next goal was to be able to work in that, get the experience, get the skill set to get a job at a higher level. I ended up going to the provincial government as the coordinator there. Once I got there, I wanted to learn all about the provincial jurisdiction, what I could do to build some more skill sets. Then I decided now I want to be a manager. Well, to be a manager, you have to go back to school. So, did online courses, got my Bachelor of Human Services Administration in April of 2007. Do you see a theme here? I keep going back to school. I've told you I'm addicted. Once I got that, the opportunity in our office came up. Our director left on a secondment, and they didn't have anybody to step in, and they said, will you take it on? I knew I was stepping myself into a position that was way beyond my capabilities at the time. I knew I had a lot of learning to do. I thought, my goodness, I'm jumping in with both feet, and I was nervous and I was scared, and I thought, you know what? You don't win the lottery if you don't buy the ticket. And I ended up as acting director for 8 months. And I have to tell you, I did not get the job as director. I did apply. There was 6 people interviewed. I was the only one without a master's degree, and I came in second. Boy, I'm proud of myself. I didn't get the job, but I made it to the second spot. And I was really proud of myself for doing that because I didn't think I was even had a chance of getting an interview. After that job didn't work out, I was ready to leave the Premier's Council to go for another management position, and suddenly they said, you know, we have to have a manager in our office. They posted the position, and I got it. I hit the goal I set. I wanted to be a manager. And now I got the management position. Now I got a problem. I hit my goal. Now I got to make a new goal. Now I really want to be the director. But to be the director, apparently I need a master's degree. So now I start my master's studies this June. My advice to you is education. Get all the education you can get. And education is not for now, it's for later. Education is a process. Whether it's formal education like I've been doing, whether it's courses that you want to take just here and there, maybe it's personal development courses, maybe it's leadership courses, maybe it's taking courses. I recommend taking courses in human resources so that when you do go for the interview, you know what you would be asking yourself. It's an interesting concept, right? Find out what they want. So take some courses. Education is always a key. Networking. You got to get out there, you got to meet people, and a very wise person said to me, it was actually my HR instructor, that said to me, the story of, you know, everybody says, oh, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That is a lie. It's an absolute lie. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. Because you can know a lot of people, but if they don't have a clue who you are, it's not going to get you anywhere. So remember that when you're meeting people, because if you can make them remember you. Now, I'm lucky. I have a dog. Not only do I have a dog, I have a really hot dog, right? People remember me. When people meet me, you know, they say, I always call people up and say, hi, it's Diane Bergeron, you know, blind lady with dog? Or they remember my hair. Now, that's the blind lady with the long blonde hair. And my friends tease me all the time. They said, when are you going to cut your hair? And I said, I'm not. Nobody would know who I was. If I didn't have the dog, they wouldn't recognize me. Now, if I don't have the dog, they just come over and ask me where he is, but at least they know who I am, right? So have something about yourself. Now, I wouldn't recommend that being tattoos and body piercing, but have something about you that's different from everybody else, so that when you meet people, when you're networking, the next time you see them, they go, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, right? They recognize you right away. The other thing I recommend is volunteering. Volunteering to me is the key to how you're going to get a job, because the only way you can get experience in doing something is volunteering. You get out there, and you know what? And Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong. I've just been doing some interviews for various jobs lately, and when I look at the experience, I don't even look at the education, and I don't look at the job experience. That's not the first thing I look at. The first thing I look at is the volunteer experience, because I want to see what you'll do for nothing, because that'll tell me what you're willing to do for something. So volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. Doesn't matter what the volunteer is. Find something that interests you, because that's what you do. You work in a career, hopefully, that interests you, but there's a lot of people that are in jobs that aren't necessarily and specifically what they're interested in, but you only volunteer to do things that you're interested in. So that's where I go to. Those are my words of wisdom. For what they're worth, remembering the color of my hair. Picking my brain is fairly slim pickings at most days. But that's basically how I've done it and how I plan to do it for the rest of my career, which will be another 20 years or so. You got to keep learning, you got to keep volunteering, and you got to keep working towards your goals and networking. You can't stop just because you've reached that goal. Once you've reached it, it's time to make another one and move ahead. Thank you.